Welcome to the Sell My Business podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. Your liquidity event is the largest and most important financial transaction of your life, but unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time, money, and effort wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave anywhere from 50% to over 100% of their deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a nine-figure offer. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? If you believe that you either don't have the time or you'll prepare closer to your liquidity event, think again. Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing that the skills that built your business are the same ones for your liquidity event. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and our 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the maximum value for your liquidity event. At the end of this episode, take a moment to hear from business owners just like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Sell My Business podcast. And for episode 125, we're going to be doing a deep dive on the differences between leaders and managers. And actually, this was an article that I recently wrote from a terrific question that I had received from someone in the community. And speaking of Ask Me Anything questions, if you have a question that you'd like to have some answers to, come on over to the podcast site. That's podcast.deepwealth.com. And at the side, you'll see a blue tab. Click on that. The tab says Ask a Podcast Question. And there you'll get to record your question. I'll hear it and we'll have an opportunity to address it. So the question that came my way was a terrific one. What is the difference between a leader and a manager? Is there a difference between leaders and managers, or is it just one and the same? We're just trading off titles because they both do the same thing. And this is a common misconception out there with business owners, but I have to tell you the difference is night and day. And so let's talk about actually useful advice on the differences between leaders and managers. You're going to learn 5 powerful strategies that help you identify what the differences are and specifically what you can be doing in your business to reap the rewards of leadership over management. So the first strategy, the differences between leaders and managers, has leaders play the long game. So what's the long game? What does that mean? And how does this affect leaders? Well, the long game has everything to do with having a vision, but not just any vision, a huge vision. In fact, I believe Jim Collins a while back called it a big, hairy, audacious goal, or a BHAG. The vision is such a big one that, in fact, it can create a market disruption. So leaders are motivated by a big vision or a BHAG. And as leaders, when chasing after that vision, they're not waiting for recognition. They're not waiting for rewards. They know what they have to do and they go after it. That vision is everything for them. So let's compare that now to managers. Managers tend to have short-term goals. They may know what the company vision is. They're certainly not going to create one. And they'll look to aspire to that vision. But in their world, their focus is on, okay, what are the goals that I need to be doing that are in the short term? What can I do today that's going to help us today? And it's the same managers that tend to look for recognition and reward. That's really their fuel to keep them going. So there's a big difference, when you're looking at a big vision, which is maybe years down the road, or you're playing towards the short game, you're playing for today. Both have some advantages and disadvantages, but where we want to be is on the vision side. We want to be playing on the long game. Because remember, when we're only playing for today, we're making decisions that may help us today, but may not help us tomorrow. And when it comes to the 9-step roadmap of preparation, particularly when you have your eye on a liquidity event, everything that you're doing today, you want to be putting that towards your vision of solving a really painful problem, creating a market disruption, and in the process, you're massively increasing the enterprise value of your business. So know that the first difference is that leaders have a vision, they play the long game. Managers have goals and they're playing the short game. Let's talk about strategy number 2 and difference number 2. The difference between leaders and managers has leaders choose relationships over processes. So let's take a step back. Leadership is all about the vision, and as part of that vision are the stakeholders. So who would be the stakeholders for you? Well, there's always exceptions, but for most businesses, stakeholders, if we're going to start internally, are certainly all of your team members, your employees. And then if we look externally, it's going to be your clients. It's going to be the suppliers that you're working with. Perhaps you have a board of advisors or board of directors. They're going to be stakeholders. And let's also put in there the media. So in your world, those are your stakeholders. And what leaders do when they have their vision, they're focusing on the stakeholders who are not only part of that vision, but those stakeholders are going to be the people that help to get that vision done. So let's contrast that now to managers. Managers aren't looking at the stakeholders. Managers are focusing on the structures and the processes. And while that's okay, and that is important to do, it's not okay when it's done in isolation. So if your structures and processes are the end all and be all, there's no bigger picture of why you're doing it or how you're doing it, that's where things become a problem. And let me illustrate this. What leaders will do that managers will not do. Leaders will build trust by doing what they say and saying what they do. Leaders will create teams. And what the leaders will do is they will work with those teams and ensure that those teams incorporate that big vision, those lofty goals, that huge vision into what they're doing day in and day out. Leaders will choose the people. They'll choose the team over the processes and the systems. Now, you may be saying, well, wait a minute, isn't that a bad thing if a leader is choosing the vision and the people and the stakeholders over processes and teams? Well, it isn't, in the sense that the leader knows that the vision is the most important thing, and the stakeholders are the people who are going to make that vision happen. And there's times in every business where you're not going to have a direct match. In other words, the process and the systems are going to come into conflict with that vision. And that's when you have to take a step back and re-engineer the process and the systems to ensure that there's now harmony and unity with the vision. If you contrast that to managers, managers are instead, they're focusing on the individuals and the goals. And again, there's a role for focusing on individuals and the goals of the individuals, but only if that's done in the context of the bigger vision. And so the challenge that we have with managers, if they're putting the goals ahead of the vision, if they're focused on the people and the goals and not the bigger picture, what are people doing in other departments? How does this interplay with us? It's not okay to have goals met with an individual if that process isn't in sync, if that process isn't part of the big picture. And that's where you begin to have the disconnect. Leaders will recognize this and they will resync everything so that you don't have the silos, and I'll talk about this in another strategy, and instead you have a holistic view. You have harmony across the company. So that's strategy number 2 and difference number 2, where the differences between leaders and managers is where leaders are choosing relationships over the processes. And let me ask you a question. Think about this. As you've gone through your career, I'm sure you've had a number of different colleagues and perhaps even bosses that you've had along the way. Who did you do more for? Did you do more for the colleague or the boss that you felt supported you, that you felt understood you? The boss or colleague who was more of a mentor, more of a friend? I suspect you went more in that direction. For the colleagues that you just did it because you felt an obligation, or a boss simply because of the title, it was a boss and you felt you had to do it, I suspect that perhaps you did it, but you always got better results when you felt that you were cared for, you knew your needs were looked after. And this is the other thing, when leaders choose relationships over processes, Effectively, what they're doing is they're tuning into the world's favorite radio station, WII.FM. In the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience, we talk a lot about WII.FM. That's an X factor, the ability for an organization and its leaders to tune into WII.FM becomes both an X factor and a Rembrandt, because that's where you're uncovering what's the motivation of people. What do we need to do for the people that, number one, it's going to help the business, but at the same time, it's helping the people as well. So we're creating a win-win. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not what's good for the business and it's a loss for the people, and it's not what's good for the people or the team and it's a loss for the business. It's good for both the people and the business. Again, I'm going to use that word harmony. You have that harmony, you have that unison, you're working towards that vision. And speaking of the vision, that ties nicely into strategy number 3. And strategy number 3 is why the vision is everything when pursuing success. So what are the differences when it comes to vision between leaders and managers? And I want you to pay close attention here because the differences are subtle, but the differences are big. So leaders create an exciting narrative for a vision, and that narrative around the vision has a bright and prosperous tomorrow. Now, if you've been through the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience, this is going to sound very familiar to you because in step number 2, X factors that insanely increase the value of your business, and step number 3, mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event, it's all about a narrative that tunes into the world's favorite radio station, WII.FM, and that narrative, it's what's getting your stakeholders excited. And you know what? I'm going to put as part of our stakeholders your future investor or your future buyer. They may not be here today, but they will be here at one point, and let's talk to that. Leaders create an exciting narrative that have people understand, number one, the why they're doing what they're doing and the how that it works. When people understand the why and the how, you have motivation to get things done. It's not the same blank, different day. People are excited to be on a winning team that's making a difference. Deep Wealth's vision is changing the social fabric of society one liquidity event at a time. And we do that by having business owners learn the 9-step roadmap of preparation. And once they do that, they'll go on to be much more successful and wealthier in their liquidity event, that they can now take an allocation of their wealth, set up a foundation, or find a social cause or a charity where they can now truly make an impact on society in the most positive of ways. So leaders understand that a vision combined with a narrative, this is the rocket fuel that gets people to go the extra mile and to make that difference. And it's also leaders who tap into the potential of what people can do, not where they are right now, but where they can be, because leaders look within people to see who they really are and are helping them realize that potential and to get out there. And it's also the same leaders who, knowing what people can do, they'll create powerful teams where there's synergies among the teams to get things done. Let's contrast that now to managers as we talk about the difference between leaders and managers. Managers are taking a very different approach. A manager will try and control the situation itself and focus on the much smaller picture. Part of that smaller picture may be an individual key performance indicator, a KPI, or it may be an individual goal. Now, you may be saying at this point in the conversation, well, wait a minute, Jeffrey. Isn't it important that we hit a KPI? Isn't it important that an individual hits a particular goal? And the answer is, it depends. Why does it depend? If an individual is hitting a goal or a KPI at the expense of the team, at the expense of the business, then no, it's not worth it at all. And this is the issue with the managers. For managers, and this is not to cast any negative aspersions on managers, that managers are bad people. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is it's the focal point of managers. That's where the issue is. Because from a manager side of things, the focal point is more internal. It's more on the short game, not the long game. And that's where we start having the issues. So whereas managers are focusing on the smaller picture and leaders are focusing on the bigger picture, that is a night and day difference. And if you want to create a market disruption, If you want to increase your growth, if you want to increase your profits and your revenues, you must focus on the bigger picture. You must focus on the vision. And so that's strategy number 3, the difference between leaders and managers of why the vision is everything when you're pursuing success. Where does that take us now for strategy number 4? And what is strategy number 4? Well, strategy number 4, it is the game-changing difference between taking on risk versus managing risk. And here's a bit of a rhetorical question for you. Of leaders and managers, who do you think takes on the risk? And who do you think manages the risk? Well, you got it. It's the leaders who are taking on the risk, and it's the managers who are managing the risk. But let's talk about this. Let's go into a little bit more detail on this. Leaders are willing to fail if it means that one of their who knows how many attempts can create a market disruption. So in other words, leaders who have created this powerful narrative around this BHAG of a vision, and the leader and the team is moving towards that vision. A leader and the team understands that, you know what, we're going to fail, but we're not really failing because that failure is giving us feedback of what doesn't work. We will incorporate what does work and we'll try it again in the next version and the next version and the next version until we finally get it. Now, of course, in life and business, there's always moderation. So a leader who goes off to the extreme and has catastrophic failures that is costing the company millions and millions of dollars and can put it out of business, that's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about, it's a calculated risk where, okay, we may fail, but it's not going to put us out of business. We're not going to lose clients over this. We're going to learn from this. It's going to make us stronger. It's going to make us better. And it's a different mindset. And you know what? Mindset is absolutely everything. And the ability to have the right mindset now, when you're preparing, you're going to leverage that because in step 5 of the 9-step roadmap, we talk all about a winning mindset and how that winning mindset has got to be there for you, for your key employees, for your team, for the advisors that you bring on, and even instilling that mindset with your future buyer or your future investor. But let's focus right now internally. It's that mindset of welcoming failure internally. You know, most organizations, failure is a taboo. If you fail, you're going to lose your job. If you fail, you're not going to get the bonus. Well, leaders understand that you have to fail if you want to move forward. And that's where you often hear the saying, fail fast, fail quickly. Don't repeat the same failure twice, but move forward from your failures. And that's exactly what happens. You know my story by now. I started my e-learning company right out of my MBA program. I had no money. I had no experience. I had no team. My new best friend, my BFF, was otherwise known as failure. And it was painful, but my grit and my determination kept me in the game long enough that Embonet became successful. And when I look at my success and when I look at my failures, as painful as failure is, that's where I've learned the most. And I want you to ask a question for yourself. I want you to look at your failures. I want you to look at your successes. And if you're telling me you don't have any failures, come on, let's get real here. Of course you have failures. Think back to something that didn't work out. And I suspect when you look at lessons learned, you have more lessons learned and you're the better person, the better business leader for it from your failures than you are from your successes. Leaders understand this, and that's why they embrace calculated risks that may turn into failures. On the flip side, we have managers. Now, for managers, the game plan is let's play it safe at any cost. And a manager and the team surrounding the manager, the focus will be on, well, let's manage the problems that we have today. Let's not go beyond those problems. Let's manage the problem. It goes back to the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is the anthem for managers of, hey, let's just do what we need to do just to make sure that we keep this thing moving forward. Let's figure out what's going wrong in the context of what we're doing today. Let's manage through those problems. Let's not try to create something new. Let's just move beyond those problems and just keep on moving forward. But here's the thing. While that's important to do, if you're doing it from the short game, if you're doing it from the introspective of let's just work to the problems that we have today, the challenge there is that within your success are the seeds of failure, and that's exactly what's going to happen. If you contrast that to leaders, Leaders understand that the pinnacle of success usually comes right after a failure or many failures. And here's another question for you. I want you to look at one of your biggest breakthroughs, and perhaps that breakthrough led to a market disruption. Did you just wake up one day and say, hey, I have this terrific idea, and you went out and that idea worked right away and it led to the market disruption? I know, a bit of a rhetorical question there. But chances are you had an idea, you put it to the test, it didn't work, you had failures, you worked through it, but then when things looked bleak, that pressure that came from that, you figured it out and it led you to a huge success. Market disruption followed, and that was the pinnacle of your success. You're never going to get that with your managers. And let's take a step back here. Let's look to your stakeholders again, your clients. Now, your clients will tell you that they love you for what you've done today, and they will love you and be loyal to you as long as their problem is being solved by your company. But the only thing constant in life is change, and as the problems of your clients change, what are you doing about it? This is a real issue, and actually this is going to be strategy number 5 that we're going to be talking about that. So let's dive right into that and let's talk about that. So the differences between leaders and managers. Strategy number 5, the power of innovation over keeping the status quo. So leaders, what do you think they do? Are they just sitting around working towards existing problems? Well, again, another rhetorical question. I've already spoken to that. It's the opposite. Leaders are innovating. They're asking, how can I make a disruption? How can we embrace failure that it can lead to change? Leaders are looking for a way to create a better tomorrow, and leaders also know that what works today at one point in time is not going to work tomorrow. So let's go back to our clients, and actually let's go back to the very beginning. Before you started your business, you had a vision. You found a problem that you were very passionate to solve. And you went out there and you tried different things and you figured out how to solve this painful problem. In fact, you solved this problem so well that you took prospects who became clients, and in turn, those clients became raving fans. And your raving fans, your clients, your tribe, your community, they were only too happy to pay you to have that pain be taken away from them. And for most of us, that's where we would love the story to stop. But the reality is, if you want to play the long game, if you want to be around long enough to have a successful liquidity event, not just any liquidity event, but a successful liquidity event of a lifetime, you have to keep on innovating. You have to keep on asking that X factor of a question, that magic question. Hey, Mr. or Ms. Client, what keeps you up at night in terms of your business? Because you want to hear where things are changing. You know that the status quo puts you on a path to failure. If you keep on doing what you're doing and you don't change, both the marketplace and your clients will pass you by. And if you look at managers, well, managers stay within what works and they focus on improving what works. Now, again, this is not to say that that shouldn't be done. Of course it should be done. But it's being done in the context of, hey, we're going to focus on improving what works today, but we have our eye on the prize, and that eye on the prize is where things are moving down the road, where that next market disruption is happening, what the current problem is, where that's ending, and where a new problem is beginning. And let me take a little bit of a ridiculous example, but the example highlights the differences between leaders and managers. Once upon a time, the mode of transportation were horse-drawn carriages. So you'd go into a carriage, there is a horse or a few horses, and that's what got you from point A to point B. So let's now do a bit of a thought experiment here. Let's insert leaders and managers into this particular scenario. So your managers are focusing on, okay, we have this horse-drawn carriage. How can I make the ride smoother? How can I make the carriage more comfortable? How do I make the carriage maybe look a little bit better? And that's what the managers are working towards. And you know what? Leave it to them. A talented manager will get you a better carriage. It'll be much smoother. It'll even look attractive. They'll have all kinds of little innovations that will go within the carriage. But that's working within the confines of the status quo. It's your leaders who are saying, okay, you know what? Horse-drawn carriages, they're okay today, but we have problems with that. Can we figure out something that is faster, that is more convenient, something that doesn't rely on the horse, because with a horse, you have all kinds of upkeep. You have to clean up all these big messes that are being caused. It's not the most convenient way to go from A to B. And speaking of going from A to B, it is slow. It's slow and it's expensive. Can we make it quicker and less expensive? And next thing you know, comes the car. And then from the car, we have airplanes and jets, and who knows what's going to be beyond that. Perhaps it's going to be the Star Trek with the beam me up, Scotty, that we're going towards next. But leaders look towards the future, and that's what they focused on in terms of their vision. Managers never saw that. So you could be the best manager in the world and you can have the best horse-drawn carriage, but guess what? The world is going to pass you by with technology, and you're going to have cars and planes and jets, and who knows what else is coming down in the future, but those carriages quickly went out of business. And so if your business didn't have leaders that were focused on the future, that were focused on that big, hairy, audacious goal of a vision, you're no longer going to be around. And in fact, it was Ted Levitt who wrote that famous case study, Marketing Myopia. And this is where he spoke about railroad companies. At one point in time, railroad companies were all the rage. They were the best form of transport for long hauls across the country. The truth is, when we're flying today, it shouldn't be with an airline, because what Ted Levitt said in his Marketing Myopia, why the railroad companies were surpassed by other forms of transportation, they never viewed themselves in the transportation business or in the lifestyle business. They just viewed themselves as railroad companies, and that was the issue. And hindsight's always 20/20, and of course, looking back, it's easy to see this. Easier said than done. But had the leadership at the railroad companies recognized that, hey, you know what? Trains are good today, but they may not be good tomorrow. Let's start looking at other things that we should be doing. And if you think about it, you can go through the history books, and there's all kinds of examples. The biggest irony is Kodak. Kodak invented the digital camera, but they put it off to the side because they had so many profits from the film, and they didn't think that digital cameras would go anywhere. Well, fast forward to today, the irony is the inventor of the digital camera never embraced it. Leaders at other companies did, and now Kodak is a fraction of what it used to be. So the power of innovation and the power of leadership, of knowing that the status quo, maybe it's okay for today, but is not good for tomorrow, that's really where you want to be. So those are the 5 strategies. Let's look at your company. When you follow the strategies of preparation, you're also following the strategies of growth. And we talk a lot about this in the 90-day Deep Wealth Experience. And that's why the business owners who have come out of the Deep Wealth Experience are saying, Jeffrey, oh my goodness, I thought I'd be using these strategies 3 years from now, 5 years from now. But you know what? I'm actually using it today. I'm growing my company. I'm growing my company so much, my profits are increasing so much that, I don't know, maybe I don't want to sell the company. And that's what you're doing when you're preparing. The action item coming out of this episode is to take a step back and to go through everyone in your company. My personal philosophy is leadership is not a title. It is a way of life. From your frontline employees all the way to your CEOs, identify who are the leaders, regardless of title. Who are the leaders and who are the managers? So you now have 2 categories. For the people that you identified as the managers, based on the 5 strategies that I revealed today, ask yourself another question. Can the people who are acting like managers, let's be leaders ourselves, let's look within those people, are they actually leaders waiting to happen? And if the answer is yes, now is a time to spend the effort and the money on training those managers to no longer be managers and have them become the leaders that they are. And for the people that are managers, that you feel will always be managers, can't get with the program, they just can't step into a leadership kind of mindset, a leadership kind of role, well, now you have some tough questions to ask. But know this, we always want to do what's best for the business. And doing what's best for the business is ensuring that our mindset is we're going to do whatever it takes that this business will be here another day, that this business is going to be thriving and it's going to be profitable. And so you now have the opportunity of instilling a leadership mindset with everyone in your company. And you can start with yourself. You can be the change that you want to see in other people. And what you can do with that is start playing the long game. Choose relationships over processes. Start putting the vision over everything else and create a vision with a very powerful narrative. You can take on calculated risk instead of managing the risk. And you could know that the status quo isn't the way to go, that it's innovation. Start demonstrating all of those areas for everyone on your team, for everyone in your business, and you'll be the change that you want to see, and people will start following you. And in turn, you're boosting your culture. And when you have a thriving and rich culture, the culture begins the process of taking care of the people who fit in that culture, but also ensuring that people who don't fit in that culture at one point in time will no longer be in your company. So there you have it. Let's do a quick recap of how you tell the difference between leaders and managers. So strategy number 1, the differences between leaders and managers have leaders play the long game. And we talked about leaders having this huge vision, and the leader is motivated by that vision. Strategy number 2, the differences between leaders and managers has leaders choose relationships over processes. And here we spoke about leaders investing in the people, tuning into WII.FM of what's in it for that person to motivate that person to get that person over the finish line. And by investing in people, leaders build trust, and they build teams that are built on trust that really go on to do wonderful things. Strategy number 3 is why the vision is everything when pursuing success. And here we spoke about the leaders creating a very powerful narrative that inspires people to go and do terrific things, and how leaders look at people not what they are today, but who they are in the inside and what they can become. Strategy number 4 was the game-changing difference between taking on risk versus managing risk. And here we spoke about how leaders with the vision are looking at the big picture, they're playing the long game, and they're taking calculated risk to find the next problem for your clients and to solve it. They want to be ahead of the curve, and it's okay for them to take on failure. They have a mindset of it's not failure unless I don't learn from it. And then strategy number 5, the power of innovation over keeping the status quo. And there we're talking about how a leadership mindset is all about innovation, disruption, and embracing change. How leaders are always looking for how do we create a better tomorrow? And it goes back to that old saying. John Maxwell said, it's one of my favorite quotes, when the team works, the dream works. And your challenge and your mission coming out of this episode is to instill a leadership mindset for yourself and the entire team. Do this today. Yourself, the business, your clients, your stakeholders will be thanking you tomorrow for doing this. And when you follow the 9-step roadmap of preparation, you are setting yourself up for massive success. The preparation that you're doing today, this is like the key that unlocks your destiny, if you will. That success that's waiting for you, but you may not be ready for it. And that's why preparation is so powerful. So there you have it. Actually useful advice on the differences between leaders and managers. And as we wrap up this episode, I'd like to give you a heartfelt thank you. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Deep Wealth Sell My Business podcast. As I like to say, you can always make money. You can't make more time. And you took time out of your day to be with us here. And I have one other question. Did you like what you heard today? Did the strategies that you heard move the dial for you? Were you getting ideas on how you can improve your business, welcome more growth and more profits? If the answer is yes, and I really hope it was, I'd encourage you to take a look at the Deep Wealth Experience. This is our 90-day experience. It's the exact 9-step roadmap that I use for our 9-figure liquidity event with my e-learning company, Embanet. You not only learn the same strategies, but you're networking with other successful business owners in a mastermind group, and you have success coaching. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Head on over to deepwealth.com, and there you can book a free strategy call to hear all about it. And speaking of the Deep Wealth Experience, please stay tuned, because right after this, you're going to hear from the business owners that graduated from the Deep Wealth Experience and how it was such a game changer for them. So once again, thank you so much, and wishing you a terrific day. And as always, please stay healthy and safe.
The Deep Wealth Experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe it's going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Sell My Business podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Reviews help me reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. As we close out this episode, a heartfelt thank you for your time, and as always, please stay healthy and safe.